Good afternoon, everybody. This is Beth Miller with Wagtown, and you are here for Wagtown Wednesday. We come to you every week with great ideas, inspiration, things that you can do to make a difference, whether it's for your dog, lots of dogs, or every dog. So we're here and we're going to be talking with people again every week. We try to bring someone to you or a topic to you that will inspire you to get off the couch, get your keyboard out, whatever it is you can do, but also to learn what's out there, to learn what's possible, to learn what resources that you have, and open your eyes to things that maybe you haven't thought of when it comes to owning a dog. So I'm very happy to introduce you to a friend of mine that I've known for several years, but we haven't seen each other in years. And she is a guru of dog law, mediation, conflict resolution, just anything to do with the ugly side that we don't want to talk about, right? Of what happens when there are bad circumstances. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Deborah Hamilton, and you can see on there, she's Hamilton Law and Mediation. So Deborah, welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, Beth, thanks so much for having me. And that was a lovely introduction. Yes, I do help people in conflict over animals most of my day, and other parts of my day, I help people make plans for their pets in case something happens to them long-term, short-term. And that's the hardest piece for people to really pay attention to. Sort of like conflict too, because once we get into a conflict over a pet, we have to be right over getting it right. And so my practice stopped litigating and started really helping people get it right for the pets, and it works beautifully. So I'm so thrilled that I hung up my litigation pumps and now just help people really try to resolve their conflicts over an animal with whomever. So many people
Litigation pumps. I like that. That's so much
Oh
better
yeah, you
than
have
Shingle is gone.
litigation. Yep.
I like
It's
that.
it's visual. It's a visual. Everyone has litigation pumps.
I love it. I love it. Now, one of the things that I like about what you're doing is that while you have this really wide array of knowledge for, really, I don't even know how many dozens of proposals and arguments and situations that you've dealt with that kind of fall into different categories. But the one that you and I were talking about earlier today was having a plan for your dog. And I know that a lot of people, especially with hurricane season coming up and FEMA and Red Cross talking with people about having a go bag for your dog and being ready for like an emergency situation with weather or something like that. And so I think people are fairly aware that that's a good idea. I don't know that they're actually doing it, especially I'm in Ohio, so we don't have a real go bag need except for fire. So one of the things that I think of when people say having a plan for your dog is if there's an emergency, then I can get out of the house safely with my dog. And what you're talking about is a much more comprehensive view of your dog's life and their quality of life and your quality of life. And when you put the two of those together, some really amazing things and some terrible things can happen. So can you walk us through sort of the core concept of what that is for starters?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because most people, especially if they buy a special kind of dog that they've always wanted or they've always had, or they rescue a dog from a shelter situation or a difficult situation, want to make sure that dog never falls into the wrong hands, never lives that life again, never goes back to the shelter. And yet they never make a plan to assure that happens. I broke my ankle in 2013 and had 9 dogs, and no one to help me care for the 9 dogs. My husband said to me, and I love him and I'm still with him, I'm taking care of you and your broken ankle. I can't really take care of 9 dogs as well. So I realized that if I was ill prepared for some, thing falling upon me, yes, did I figure out how to do it? I figured out who to call. I figured out how to take care of them. But wouldn't it have been great if
a broken bone?
Yeah, all while I had a cast on my leg going up and down a flight of stairs, because of course we fed the dogs in the dog run that went out to the 4 acres. That's where they love to eat, and that way I could make sure everybody ate, what they were supposed to and not what they weren't supposed to. So it was just my process, and I realized going up and down a flight of stairs with a broken ankle, not easy. And as I said, I didn't think I was alone in this, that people find themselves, if you have a horse and you fall off, if you have a dog and you trip over it, whatever it is, it's something that you don't plan for short term. Some people put all their information in a will. And after I give my program, I always say, well, I'm glad, because they always come up and say, I'm all set, Deborah, I have it all in my will. And I go, well, I'm really glad you know you're going to die. because you have to be dead in order for all the information that you
Good
put for the
point.
care of your pet in your will. You have to be dead. Otherwise it can't even be addressed. So
Yeah.
for me, I sat there for 8 weeks and created the first name. You'll love this, is I'm Not Dead Yet. That was the first name of the program, to really focus on the fact that what happens if you're not dead yet. So, okay, you've made a plan for your dog if you're dead, but if you're not dead, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you want to keep your dogs with you. I know, Beth, you don't want to give your dogs away if you, God forbid, have cancer, break a bone,
Right.
have a stroke, have
No, no. And I've
Alzheimer's.
had friends in that situation, and it's horrific because when you think about it, how many people are in a position to, right at that moment, take in a dog that they don't know, that may have medical issues, may have behavioral issues, and they're going to be missing their person. And to know that there's nothing in place, that makes me really uncomfortable. I don't know about everybody watching, but I'm sure you run into that with people that they're having this aha moment.
Well, it's the aha moment, but sometimes it's too late for the aha moment because you are already in the hospital. It really was driven home during COVID, because I wrote the program, of course, pre-COVID. I wrote it in 2013. But then
Okay.
I realized during COVID that you really had to have some relationship with your neighbors in the event that something happened to you and you needed someone on the spot to tell the police or the EMS, leave the dogs in the house. I know who to call. I will take care of them until that person comes. Do not take the dogs. The last thing you want is your dogs, unless it's an exigent circumstance and there's no one around,
Hmm.
to be going to animal care and control. Because
Okay.
then you have to have some documentation to get those dogs out of animal care and control. If you
Okay.
own them, who is Beth going to be able to get them out? She doesn't own them.
Right,
She
right.
might
Oh,
be the
because
person
yeah, it
who
has to be
told.
the guardian or the harborer, right? So what's like, so let's say I wanted to talk to my neighbors are amazing. So let's say I wanted to talk to her and say, Katie, and we always do this with our dogs or their houses, right? So it's the same kind of thing. Does she need some kind
Yep,
of document that gives her authority to come in and do that? Or is it just sort of that she comes in
that's
and
a
says,
great
I
that's a
know
great
Beth and I'm
question.
good to
So
go?
during COVID, I was in a new house and didn't know anybody in my neighborhood. And I was walking my dogs, because weren't we all walking our dogs during COVID? Because it was the only
Yes,
thing we could do safely. And
yes.
I
And
got to know
healthy.
everybody. Everybody who had a dog. So I brought 3x5 cards and put them in mailboxes. In my neighborhood, we have mailboxes. And I said, in case of an emergency, this is my name number. This is where I live. If you
Mhm.
need me to care for your dog until someone can come and get the dog,
Did
let
you
me know,
really?
call me. Oh yeah, and I had 15 of the 20
Deborah.
cards that I put out. 15 people came, drove up my driveway and said, we never even thought of that. Thanks so much. And of course, the flip side of that was they said, here's my name and number. If something
Oh
happens
my
to you, I'll take
gosh.
care of you.
All right. I'm like,
So
I
when
literally just got chills. Literally, I'm not a
yeah,
chills person, but oh my gosh.
so when you say, I don't have anyone, oh yeah, you do. Because if you point out to them that they might have an issue and you're willing to help them with it, then they're going, oh wow, this is really nice that Beth said this. Let me get in touch with Beth and tell her,
Yeah.
I will too. Because card said, I'm not going to take your dogs off the property. I'm just going to help you leave directions. And what really troubles me most of the time, and you said it perfectly, who's going to know this dog? If you go to the hospital, if you break something, or you have COVID, or you're suffering with cancer, whatever it is, if someone is coming in to take your dog
Hmm.
because you can't care for it anymore, how are they going to know what this dog likes, doesn't like, is afraid of, should eat, shouldn't eat? Does it get along with other dogs? Does it get along with other cats? So I went from I'm Not Dead Yet to the MAP plan, MAAP. They all stand for something, which the tagline is navigating the journey your pet takes when you can't care for it.
Oh,
Because we all think that our kids, our husbands, our wives, our mothers, our fathers are going to take our dogs, and they will, and they might, and that's fabulous. But wouldn't it be great to hand them uh, a dossier on each of your pets so that they know this dog can't go with other dogs because I have an Irish setter who hates white dogs. I don't know what it is, but she dislikes it. Well,
mhm.
that's in her dossier. She gets
Right.
different kinds of medication. That's in her dossier. If they're a puppy or they're a runner, that's in their dossier. They climb 6-foot fence. That's in their dossier, because
Wow.
otherwise I have to read your mind. right? So the MAP plan stands for making a plan. So you have to sit down and say, okay, this is how I'd like my dogs to be cared for, my cats,
Okay.
my birds, my horses, my fish, my reptiles.
Yeah.
Superstorm Sandy, there were so many people who didn't have electric. So I laughed when you said, fires and things like that. Ohio has snow and ice. So you lose electricity. What are you going to do? How are you going to take care of those pets that need heat? So
Yep.
you need heat for hamsters, you need heat for fish, you need heat for birds. So
Yeah.
you really have to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make a plan, you have to decide what you want to do with your pets. Maybe you do want to just say, I'm going to give my dog back to the breeder, I'm going to give my dog back to the rescue, and they'll find a good home for it. Fabulous. At least the person who is your family member knows what you want to do with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
But then you take that second step, which is address the needs of the pet. So M, make a plan. A, address the needs of the pet.
Okay.
Because you have to let everyone know what they eat, who they get along with. Are they afraid of thunderstorms? Do they dig holes?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is. Are they
Okay.
escape artists? Really letting people know about the
I
good
really like that
about your
idea.
pet.
Because I mean, it's like
And,
when you
and
leave your kid with somebody, you'd say like, they're allergic to peanuts, so don't give them any, whatever, or don't even cook with that, right? And acclimating them to that and saying, they don't like this, they don't like that. And we went geocaching with my son one day. This is back when he was little. And I remember we were in the woods and his little friends, he just froze in his tracks. And I turned around, I'm thinking like bear trap, right? I mean, he just was terrified.
right, or
And he's
steak
like,
or something, right?
yeah. And I'm thinking, I said, what's wrong? And he says, I'm stuck. And I'm like, oh no, did you step in something? Or it was pricker bushes had caught on his jacket and he was terrified. He had never been hiking
Yeah.
before. So it's like that, like to let people know my son has never been outside. My son can't swim, that kind of stuff. Your dog, right? They don't like water. They can't swim. They can't eat this food. They have a sensitive stomach. They're diabetic. It never occurred to me that I would be in that position. Like you said, it just doesn't occur to me that it's like, what if I can't speak for my dog? Like, what would I do?
And what if yeah.
You what?
Yep.
So
So
what?
that's the most important piece is you need to provide people with the roadmap to take care of your pet in the way you want to take care of it. So
Mhm.
addressing the needs, I loved it. You said, I'm going to tell them what they can eat, what they can't eat. And being able to make that, little dossier for your pet will create the most successful transition of that pet short-term, long-term. Because maybe like my ankle, it was only about 4 or 5 weeks that I really needed help. Didn't get it, but really needed help. But you could definitely have someone come in, help you, give them all the ideas, let them know about the animals that they're taking care of,
Mhm.
and make sure that animals, get the care that they need and are safe.
Yeah.
So it's really important to write down everything that's important about your pet, important for somebody else to know,
Yeah.
because then if God forbid they have to fully transition, it will be with the most opportunity for success ever.
Oh, I love that.
Otherwise,
I love that.
yeah.
Because I was just thinking
Yeah.
about when you're talking about that, now I have this like, phobia mind where I'm like, okay, so if I did call Katie, like where's his food? How much does he eat? Is he a free feeder or does he eat 3 times a day or 2 times a day? How much water does he get at a time? Is he a gulper? Where does he like to go potty? Is there stuff in the yard that he's not supposed to be around? Anything like that. And then he's a service dog in training. So in that case, we would immediately have to know someone that would say, oh, you need to call this organization because they are the owner and guardians of these service dogs. And, so that's like an easy out for me. But if I owned him, if he was my dog, the idea of not being able to tell someone how to enter the house, right? Like when you enter the house, this is what you should do. So he knows, or have them come over and meet your dog. I mean, this stuff just, right? Every time I have one of these conversations on Wednesdays, my mind is like, you think,
Yeah.
and then you don't, right? So tell me, you talked about,
and
what?
so you make the plan and you address the needs of the pet, but the third piece, the third A, is appoint caregiver. So you were perfect, right? So you are appointing a caregiver. As I said, post-COVID, your caregiver, one of them has to be nearby so they can step in until the long-term caregiver comes. So if you have a dog that's a service dog in training, I'm sure you don't live next door to the service academy where he would be returned. So there'd have to be someone who would take care of it. So I always say you have to appoint 3 people and only one can be a family member. Because as you said, if you
Oh,
were
yeah.
in your husband, your son, your daughter would want to be with you at the hospital. So it has to be 2 other people who
Yeah.
can come in, take care, know how to feed the dog. It's all muscle memory to us. We know how much to feed. We probably don't even measure it anymore. We know exactly how much to feed,
Right.
but somebody coming in, never going to know. And then the last piece, which is the most important piece, and no one ever does. No one ever does. You have to publish that map plan. You
Okay.
have to tell the caregivers, you have to tell the neighbor who's going to be the one, and you have to give them a copy of it because you want them to know that, if Deborah gets sick, Beth is the next door neighbor. So Beth knows, okay, so if Deborah gets sick, I call Mary Lou, and Mary Lou is the one who's going to come over, but I probably will have to let the dogs out once or twice in that 24-hour period in case Mary Lou can't get there. So, Mary Lou knows about Beth. Beth knows about Mary Lou. Deborah has been clear to both Beth and Mary Lou, and maybe even Joan, because Joan is the backup to Mary Lou. And if Mary Lou is out of town, is on vacation, well then, Beth knows, okay, I can't get in touch with Mary Lou. I'm going to call Joan. Because you have to have that redundancy to make sure that your pets are cared for
Right.
long-term, short. You really need to make sure that people know what to do. The other people to publish it with.
Yeah.
So your family, publish it with
Okay.
your family. Let them know where it is, even if they don't live with you, because the
Yeah.
problem is that you publish with the people who live with you.
Do you use
And
the red cap tube like you do for like a living will and things like that? Would they even think to look for that for a dog?
well, I'm a little more old school.
Okay.
I want you to put a document on your back door, and I want you to put a document on your refrigerator that says, in the case of emergency, do not remove my pets from this house. Call one of these 3 numbers. These people know what to do with my pets and will take over my pets. Because, as
Okay.
I said at the beginning, the last thing you want is your dog to go to animal care and control. So if in fact they ignore your directives, or they can't get in touch with the 3 people whose numbers are there, you need a letter. So they have this document, right? You're publishing it. The neighbor has the letter. Mary Lou has the letter. Joan has the letter. So they can go to animal care and control and claim your pets, because it says in the
Okay.
case of an emergency, and my dogs are taken to animal care and control, I give Mary Lou permission to pick them up. I give Joan permission to pick them up. I give Beth permission to pick them up, take them home, whatever, so that they're cared for. I'm always critical of people who don't tell people about their plans. It is an imperative that you tell people about their plans.
Yeah.
You have to tell your lawyer so that your lawyer knows what it is you want done and who you
Okay.
want to be paid in the event they take care of your pet. And you have to tell your veterinarian, because if one of my dogs gets sick and I'm in the hospital and Beth is taking care of it, if my vet doesn't know that Beth has the my permission to bring the dog to the vet,
Yeah.
by law, he's not really supposed to care for it. Most of them will, but by law, I could deny paying him because it wasn't me who authorized that care.
I
So
see.
some vets live by the letter of the law and other vets don't. So you
Okay.
really need to leave a note with your vet that if in the case of an emergency, these are the 3 or 4 or 5, 6 people who have my permission to bring my dog to be treated.
Okay. How do you handle, let's say that you do have a dog and it's injured while you're injured. How do you handle who pays for the vet bill? Like, let's say they have to go to an emergency care center for veterinary care. How is that usually handled? Is that one of those things that people generally say, we can work this out with you, or are people more like, you got to pay, right? Then what do you do?
Well, the veterinarian wants to be paid. And so your attorney already knows that Beth is in charge of the care of the pets. And Beth calls the attorney and says, the dog has terrible enteritis. It's having bloody diarrhea. I have to take it to the vet. And the attorney goes, great, let me know. And then the attorney has the ability, or whoever is the power of attorney for me, has the ability to pay the vet. They might be my husband or my sons,
Okay.
but they're at the hospital with me, right? So
Mhm.
they're not there, but they know and they trust Beth, because everybody has to know each other. They know and trust Beth that whatever she's doing for the dogs is necessary.
Okay.
Most vets will want to get paid immediately. Some vets will say, wait, we'll do it when Deborah gets out of the hospital. And for my purposes, I would always leave a credit card with the vet to make sure that in an emergency, my
Oh, they
dogs
have
would
it
be
on
cared for.
file.
And yeah, my
Oh, that's a good
caregivers
idea. I
would
never
have
thought
to be
about that.
responsible for it. Some
Wow.
vets won't do that because, people get a little crazy, which is fine,
Right.
and I understand that, but
Yeah.
that's what I would do. So
So
making
you're
a
talking
plan.
about taking money that you have now and putting it into a fund that the attorney can then say, yes, this money is supposed to be used for that. So, okay.
Right.
I can see where
And it's a
people would come
special
up with,
fund.
is what?
It's a special fund. It's a pet trust.
Just for that. Yeah. Well, so let's say, I mean, I'm guessing the average person does not have an attorney on retainer where they can build a trust for their dog. So, beyond being able to take it to that next step, obviously getting the information down there, and then how would they find an attorney who deals with that? Is that because I remember when I got divorced, they were like, I'm not dealing with your kid's college education and I'm not dealing with your dog. We just don't do that. So now it sounds like we're starting to see that more. So, do attorneys know now how to handle that situation, or do you need to look for a special kind?
Well, some of the attorneys that I deal with have no idea what they're doing when it comes to pet trusts. They just want to put the plan for the pet in the will because that's all they do.
Mhm.
And most people don't want to pay for a pet trust. My dear departed colleague, Rachel Hirschfeld, wrote a great book. It's called Petriarch. And she created the pet protection agreement that you can do yourself, which is
Okay.
basically the MAP plan's next step. It's how to pay for it, what to do. It has its benefits and detractions, as the pet trust has its benefits and detractions. There's also annuities you can set up to pay for the care of your pet in the event you can't care for it.
Okay.
So it's a process. It's sort of like a Christmas club. If you do an annuity, sort of like a Christmas club, you could start it when you get the dog
Mhm.
and use it for all the dog's needs throughout its life.
Right.
And then you'd also want to make sure if you have pet insurance that they know that this
Yeah, I was just
person
going
can
to
come
ask
in.
you, can they do they ever cover that?
Well, you have to see if your insurance is transferable. So if you have insurance on your pet, see if it's
Uh-huh.
transferable.
Okay.
Because God forbid something happened to you and then Beth took your dog, you certainly would want the benefit of having insurance for that pet since it was 6 weeks old when you got it, or 8 weeks old, or 12 weeks old when you got it. You'd want Beth to have the benefit of that. Some
Mhm.
insurance policies go with the dog to a new owner, some don't. You have to call your insurance provider and find that
Okay.
out. But you want the one that goes with the dog, because
Yeah.
then you can set aside money to pay the premium for a year or two. I always say if the person you're putting in charge of taking your pet long-term, short-term, is in it for the money, they're the wrong person to choose.
Right.
You should really put maybe 1,000 or 2,000 if you can spare it,
Mhm.
500 if you can spare it, to simply get the dog and a bag of food to the other person.
Okay.
And then, they've taken on your dog. It's sort of like if you had no plan, they'd have to take on your dog. So why should they benefit, by the tens of thousands of dollars for taking your dog? They're
Mhm.
doing you a solid like you would do them. So it's nice to leave money in your will if you die, but if you're just sick, if you're just disabled, that's something that's totally different. I loved when you talked about disasters. It it is something that no one plans for. When I see these floods and the horses, or the fires and the horses, it drives me nuts. And yeah, I know it's hard to move horses, but it is something you really need to make a plan for. And I always I always tell people, if the hurricane is coming and they're saying it's coming on Saturday or Sunday, call the Holiday Inn 100 miles away that takes dogs and say, I'd like a room. And when's the last time, whatever one you can cancel at 4 o'clock on the day, that's the one you want to make a reservation in,
Right.
so that you can go there in the event. Look at Louisiana. It lost all of its electricity forever in 7 days. You had to drive about 100 miles to get electricity. And so people who made those reservations early were able to take their pets with them. The other ones might not have been. So this is all about pre-planning, pre-paving a positive outcome for your pet. And I always say that most people go, well, I would never let Beth have my pet. I hate her. Well, Beth's going to be the one who gets your pet because she lives closest to you. And she's the one that you didn't write a plan to make sure someone else got your pet. So if you truly don't want somebody to get a pet, you better write a plan that doesn't say, I always say, don't do the negative. That's that conflict piece of me, but do the positive. I'd really like Fluffy to go to Mary Lou or Joan or Deborah. And this is their number. And as I said before, I really, 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 really cannot stress enough to have the information on your door in case of emergency. Please call these 3 numbers. This is the neighbor on your refrigerator. And then you can also say the file for the dogs is right next to the refrigerator or whatever. Grab and go. It has to be somewhere where someone.
I like that idea of saying like, look here, because I'm not sure my neighbors want me to put their phone number on the back on my back door. You know what I mean? But you could say
exactly. So if your neighbor doesn't.
Yeah, I love that, because then they go inside and there's a kit. Here's where it is. And then it's got all the information that they need in there. And it could have, like a pet store gift card that says, I know you're going to need pet food, so here's whatever dollars, and they can go, get it. Yeah, I love that idea of having those people lined up and they understand. And the nice thing about doing this, when you think about it, is for every person that does this and finds 3 people to have on their list, those 3 people are probably going to do the same thing. They might ask you too. So be prepared for that. But yeah, I could see that spreading, because people will start to think, oh my gosh, what would happen if this, and with COVID, I mean, you just never know, or any other illness, like you said, you fell, you just never know. Nobody plans an injury. Nobody plans to be in the hospital when it's, something like that. So, being prepared. And we all talk about that we're the best dog owners, right? That we know what's best for our dogs. And so put that down.
And yet we don't make a plan. And yet we don't make a plan. So yeah, we're the best owner. We don't make a plan. I always talk about the D's, which is death is one of them, but then you have divorce. If you had a plan before you disliked your spouse, divorcing with pets wouldn't be as acrimonious. Disease, delay, dementia, disability, disaster, and deployment. What about those who are deployed? What do they do? They need to make that plan too.
Yep. Wow. See, so many dogs in need. And it's just like I was telling you, I used to work it was ad agency. So one of our client bases was in the industry of death care. So, trying to convince people to come in and do a death care plan was almost impossible. And you said it earlier, you just don't think you're going to die, right? You certainly don't think you're going to have an accident where your dog is stranded. And the idea, and to me, it's sort of like, just imagine it. Imagine your dog there. They don't know where you are. They're terrified. You don't want them to go to, you want to know that they're okay, because you want to focus on getting better, or getting back to them somehow, and knowing that they're not lost to you. You were talking about the dog that was lost and then taken to rescue. And then once they go out as a rescue, you were saying those contracts are impossible to get past. Is that right? Was I hearing you?
Yeah,
correctly?
we talked about that before. Yeah, we talked about that before we came online. If your dog is taken by animal care and control, and then animal care and control holds it for the statutory time, 5 to 7 days, and you can't answer the phone to say anything because with COVID, you were maybe on a ventilator, then it goes to either the rescue or a breed specific rescue. If say you have a Frenchie or an Afghan, or like me, an Irish setter. And then if they're placed by that rescue, you cannot get that dog back. Those contracts are airtight. My colleagues in the legal field have made it airtight because nobody wants to rescue a dog and then have someone come and say, oh, wait a minute, that's your dog. I don't want, they don't want that to happen. And it's interesting because, most people don't recognize that it's not just about, what you do with your pet when you die. It's about what you do with your pet while you're alive. because you want that dog back. And if you're going through chemotherapy, or you have dementia, or you've been disabled by a broken something or something,
Mhm.
or a family member is going through that, you really want to be able to kick in a plan that cares for the pets, make sure the pets are safe, and then return the pets to you
Mhm.
when everything comes back together. One point I forgot to mention, and this is
Yeah.
really important, if you travel with the pets, right, you need
Oh.
to have contact numbers in your car with you visible. So if you want, say, in case of emergency, directives for the dogs in the back seat or in the crates in the back or wherever you keep them is in the glove compartment, because you want to make sure that the police, EMS know what to do with the dogs, because they're
Mhm.
going animal care and control. Your
Right.
neighbor isn't there unless they're traveling
Mhm.
with you, and they might be injured as well. So you need to have information in your car that says what to do with your dogs, who to call, what to do with your dogs. The
Mhm.
other piece is if you're traveling by yourself and your dogs are at home, that information is so important as well. My dogs are home alone. In the glove compartment is the information you need to help get care to my dogs if I'm injured in an accident.
Wow. That's amazing way to go. It's just those little things that you just don't think about. It's just,
Think
well,
about
it's just out of your mind that something like that is going to happen to you. So now when you talk about having like a POA or power of attorney for someone to take care of the dog if they have surgery or something massive that needs to be done, is there like a dog specific POA that I can have, or is there a limitation to POA so that I'm not giving them blanket POA, right? It's just with regard to the dog, or do you need
Well,
to have
that's the
some more?
conversation you have. That's absolutely the conversation you have with your caregivers. And then
Okay.
you have that conversation with the vet. If Beth brings my dog in and it's been hit by a car, please do everything you can to save its life. Or if it's hit by a
Mhm.
car and it'll never be okay, then I want you to put it down, even though Beth might be saying, no, 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 I want to save its life. You have that conversation with the veterinarian, you have that conversation with Beth. And
Mhm.
so they know what next thing you want to do.
Gotcha.
And so the vet knows that if you bring, they don't really even need a power of attorney because you've already alerted your veterinarian. Remember, you got to publish it.
Mhm.
You've already alerted your veterinarian that Beth has permission to bring your dog in and to treat it. He
Mhm.
has permission to treat it if Beth brings it in. And then he
Right.
also knows how you want to treat it. So if you are a do everything in your power, spend money, it doesn't matter, then he needs to know that, and he needs to talk to Beth about that, and both of them will agree because you've talked to them at length about what you want.
Mhm.
Or if you have already told them, if this is critical and they're never going to have, their quality of life is going to stink, I really want to let them go so they don't have to go through it. And both of them have already been told that, both, and maybe Beth would love to save the dog because if it was her dog, she would save it, but it's not her dog, it's your
Right.
dog.
Right.
And she knows what you want to do, and so does the vet.
Wow. And that's so important because, we can't speak for them. And this is one opportunity when you can. You can really make
Well,
that.
I'll give you an example. So if your dog is diagnosed with bone cancer while you're recovering from cancer yourself, or you're, unconscious with COVID or whatever, they would know that you would want to cut its leg off and put it on chemotherapy, or you wouldn't.
Mhm.
Those are the kind of conversations you really have to have, because they are you when you're incapable of taking care of your pet.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there stickers? I know that they use like baby on board. Is there something that is pre-made that people can get that just say my animal's emergency care package is in the refrigerator or whatever, someplace that they would know where that is? Do they have something
Well,
like
I've
that? Do you
created a
have?
ton of stickers to hang. So there are a number of people who say go to dog shows and have their dogs in their car. I not only hang stickers, I hang thermometers so people can see that it is, 63 degrees in the car, and
Mhm.
the dogs are fine even though the windows are up. But there are all sorts of plain stickers that you can find that just says, in case of emergency, this is my pet plan. I have them for the MAP plan as well. When we do our conference, we send them to you so that you can put them on your window. You can put them on your refrigerator. I know nobody wants some sticker on their refrigerator. I get it. However, it may save your dog's life, and your dog may be reunited with you when you come home after you've had an accident. So it just is whether or not, and it doesn't have to be on your refrigerator, but it has to be somewhere where the police don't have to look to see it.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
don't have to look hard to find it, because
Mhm.
you want to make it infinitely easy for them to know three things. One is you have pets in the house. Two, you have a caregiver nearby who will take care of the pets. And three, don't take them out of the house.
Oh, I love
Unless
it.
the house is burning. And then, of course, we want to take the pets out of the house,
Yes,
but the house is,
yes, yes.
yeah.
And that's when we do need to go back in Ohio. So, yeah. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. This is amazing information. I feel like I could ask you like 8,000 other questions. I do know that when I get off this call, then I'm going to go make my kit and make the plan. And I already know of two people that I can think of that can, actually three now that I mention it, that I can already think of that would be great partners for that. And they all have dogs. So it would be a great little,
Yep.
community. And we all know dogs are the ultimate social lubricant. So chances are, just like you said, we know all of our neighbors that have dogs. The rest of them, some of them we know, but generally speaking, it's just a wave, when you're passing them. But the dog people, and I think they get it. Can you imagine having some kind of horrible thing happen to you and knowing that you're coming home and your dog is not there? I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even
And
imagine
believe
what
me,
that would be like.
I've had several clients who've come home and their dogs weren't there, and everyone did what they thought was best at the time,
Yeah.
because the prognosis was terrible, and yet they live. So here they are, they fight and recover, and then their dogs are gone. And everybody, that's the conflict piece. And maybe I'll come back and talk to you about the conflict piece.
Yeah.
That's the conflict piece you have to have the conversation about. If you don't leave a plan and people do what they think is best for your pets, given the information they have, then you have to live with that.
Okay. So the more communication is that's the key. Communicate it, get it out there, make sure you have that plan. And I guess just brainstorm of what could happen. And you talked about the D's, all of those things that can happen, and all are terrible things. And then if you put lack of dog at the end of that, anytime that I go through anything traumatic, I'm glad I have a dog, So the
Yeah.
idea of going through
I mean, we all are.
and not having, yeah, it's amazing. Well, and it's amazing
We all are.
how much they do for us, all the stuff that they bring to our lives, and all that we do in terms of, their diet and their toys and their costumes and their stroll. I mean, we go to these extraordinary measures to have them have a happy life, to have everything they could possibly want that we can afford to do for our dogs. And then here's this really important thing that I think a lot of us are missing. Like, I don't have one for our dog. And so it's just shame on me, right? It's one of those things that you don't know until you know. And now people
No
know.
shame.
No shame.
No shame.
I
No
look at the
shame.
camera
No
now.
shame.
No
No
shame.
shame or blame. It's sort of like every day we learn something new, and every Wednesday, like you do this wonderful program, I do a half-hour conversation with people. If you go to Hamilton Law Mediation, you can sign up. It's right at the top. It's free. We just talk about this. You can ask your questions, and you can feel comfortable in going, oh my God, I have to do this. How do I do this? And we meet for half hour every Wednesday at 6:30 at night Eastern time, and just come and join us. It's a community. It's everybody who's saying what you're saying, Beth. Holy Toledo, I didn't realize I needed something more than just that discussion over a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Because your vet doesn't know, your attorney doesn't know, if you live alone and you don't have spouses or children, do your sister or brother know? Do they know what's going on?
Right. How far away are they?
You really, yeah. And you really need to make that concerted effort, because your dog is, depending on you to navigate the journey they take if you can't care for them anymore. Thus, the MAP plan.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the MAP plan. So important. So important. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go because I know you have back-to-back meetings and things like that, as we all do these days. Zoom, right? So, but I wanted to thank you so much for coming on here, because I think it's something that's off the radar, but it's a huge way that you can make a difference for your dog. And just think, if you did the difference for your dog, the other people that you're talking to are probably going to at least think about it. So if you're doing it, encourage other people to do it. And like you said, do the give. If I'm going to expect you or ask you to be a partner for me and I'm caring for my dog, should something happen, then I'm more than happy to extend the same thing. And so another great reason to get to know their dogs and, be familiar. So it's just a great thing. It's community building, it's safety for your dog, it's well-being for the dog, it's, your own mindset, knowing that your dog is cared for. All of those things are part of what happens when you live in a dog friendly community, because when you live in those communities, people are thinking about these things, they are acting on them, and they're collaborating with each other to create that safety net, whether it be from one of the horrible things that you talked about, and death and divorce and disaster, or it could be just something simple that happens in your life, that, like, being deployed. Things like that happen, and we can't help that when they happen, and they happen all the time, and we hear about them. And the last thing we want to do is have that trickle down to your pet's life experience. So anyway, I encourage you to check out Deborah's stuff. I'll have her, if you could put your comments down below with any questions, and then Deborah, if you could put in there the information about how to participate in your sessions so that people can ask questions. And if anyone has questions about anything that Deborah has talked about today, please put them in the comments. Some of you DM me, Deborah. If they do, then I'll shoot those questions off to you. But again, just make sure that you think about having this plan and then take the action. It could save your dog's life, and it could save, your train of thought and your peace of mind and everything else that goes along with being in one of those devastating situations. The last thing you want to be worrying about is my dog okay? So get out there, make the difference every Wednesday and every day. So thank you again for talking with Deborah and I. And Deborah, thank you for sharing all that wisdom with us. Very, very critical information. And I'm super excited that we got to share it. So everyone else out there, thank you very much for tuning in for Wagtown Wednesday. And as always, keep wagging. Bye-bye now.